Or they should stay like this in two little boxes. Good evening, folks. Countryman's Diary. You got Greg here, and our guest tonight. Let me just fix this stupid camera. Right, sorted. Right, for tonight's podcast, we might need one of these. Now, that's an infrared light, for those that don't know, and camera, and a nice little monitor. So, for tonight's guest, we have none other than Pete Dodsworth, which is one half of NVUK. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Greg. Very good to see you. I'm very well, thank you. Happy New Year to you and your family.
And to you,
All the
sir.
best here.
Oh,
Long time
yes.
since we've bumped into each other physically, but still
Yeah, I think we owe us a burger or a bacon bap and a cup of tea in it from memory.
it's got to be about time, hasn't it now? Definitely,
Oh, yes.
definitely.
Right, could you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, as you said, I'm one half um, of Night Vision UK. The other half, my partner in crime, Eddie St Clair. He doesn't have as much activity within Night Vision UK now as obviously he has done over the years. I was having a quick scribble down and having a quick look at sort of the history and the timescale of when it sort of started. So the Night Vision UK Facebook group started in June 2014. So that's obviously been 10 years, but we were going a couple of years previous to that. And it really started off as, if you go back over the history of night vision in the UK, certainly, a lot of it was all background. A lot of it was all individual people, forums, chat groups, things like that, sharing ideas, looking at things that you could possibly do. It was the same sort of time as we'd got people playing around with torches as well, where they were looking at, I think they were the 501Bs or something like that, the little torches that originally were a compact torch, didn't have a focusable beam. It was sort of time period of LED torches coming in, all that sort of business. So there are a lot of things going off where people were experimenting with stuff, and the simplest of things were people experimenting with CCTV cameras, and then attaching them to a screen in some way, having a power supply to it, very much as the original Infinity One spotter that you've got there. Playing around with the cameras to take off like the infrared cut filters, so at night time they could see the infrared, etc., etc. So there are a lot of people historically, and we'll say, let's say 15 years ago. I got into it probably about 14 years ago originally, and purely as a hobby. Didn't know anything really about night vision. Bumped into a guy, Paul Stokes, his name is. I went to school with him. I'd worked with him briefly. And then at the time I was running my own business doing health and safety and training consultancy, and he'd actually been a delegate on one of my courses. And I bumped into him. And I got chatting. I was saying I was looking at trying to get into air rifle shooting again. And he said, "Oh, I've got one for sale." He said, "I've got a night vision, but it's broken." And I said, "All right, what's that?" So I had a chat with him, went over to have a look, see what it was. Didn't know anything about night vision at all. Nothing whatsoever. But I know about photography. I had a chat with him, showed me this thing. I said, "Just send it back to the shop." He said, "Well, it weren't from a shop. I bought it from a guy who makes them." I said, "Oh, send it back to this guy." And I won't mention this guy's name, but he was very popular at the time within the home night vision kits. And he was a great guy at what he did. He has passed away now. But he said that Paul had broke this thing. It was nothing to do with him, and it had broken. So he weren't going to fix it. Well, he'd only had it a week, and I could see why it had broken. So I said, "Well, just lend it me. I'll try and sort it all out for you." And cut a long story short, it intrigued me so much, I got into the interest of it. Paul got his unit sorted, and I started then sort of looking for ideas and places to gain more information from. Found one of the original founder sort of forums, Night Vision Forum UK, which is not Night Vision UK, but a different forum. Great respect to them. A lot of good guys on there. Bruce, that's around now these days,
Yeah.
that does a lot of their reviews and tests like that, and a few of the others, Billy and things. And oh, blimey, excuse my ignorance now. The guy that does all the reviews that's on Facebook and everything else is doing a lot with DNT at the minute. I'll tell you his name in a bit anyway. So a lot of these guys were on the original Night Vision Forum UK, doing various things and all sharing ideas. And I got talking with this guy called Eddie St. Clair. Didn't know him. And Eddie said, oh, he'd had to go building this and building that. And we sort of started sharing ideas. And we eventually, as you do, social media, we ended up getting chucked out of a few groups because I think we sort of shared more ideas than some people wanted sharing. So we decided, okay, or I decided, shall we set up a Facebook group? That had just started in real, earnest by then. Let's get this thing up and running, and we can share his ideas, share other people's ideas. I've been accused of stealing all sorts of ideas as well, but it were all open stuff. Everybody was sharing everything. So we set it up, and I think it had only been running 12 months, and we met up with some guys that were running a shooting range. Just set up air rifle and things, associated with Phil Crampton at Ratworks, and a few other guys. Really good group of guys. Wayne Bungle Benton, he sort of got me in touch with him, and we went down there. And a guy called Carl Harlow, that you'll probably know from Solway.
Yeah.
He came down, had a look, liked what we were doing because we were building kits by then, but we weren't selling them. We were only building them, showing people what it were all about. And he said, well, we're going to British Shooting Show, and it was Stoneleigh at the time. And he said, would you be interested in coming along and just really as a crowd stopper, bring some of your stuff, have it on display, and it'll do us both good. You'll get some media coverage, obviously. People will stop and see you at the stall, and obviously it'll bring potential customers to them. So that was the original idea. Me and Eddie'd go along and we'd put these things on display. A longer story short, we're still here 14 years later on. We've exhibited at largest shooting shows within the UK, at British Shooting Show at Stoneleigh. We went through to British Shooting Show at NEC. I've done Game Fair multiple times. I've done Northern Shooting Show, done various other ones down south. So we've done the shooting show bits. I've had a Uniton gadget show on Channel 5 years ago, a spotter similar to the one that you've got, but my version instead of Eddie's. And then things evolve over the years. So I originally started off as a coal miner in my working life, so I've been used to working in dark. Back then would have been a torch on my head. And I'm still in dark now, but moved along to infrared and thermal, I suppose. So that's like a potted history of NVUK. Eddie decided a couple of years ago, and I can't say as I blame him, as things changed from the type of kits that we were building to what we've now got, which we'll discuss as we go through this, I'm sure, and things evolved and changed. Eddie were already retired anyway, so this was always a side and a pocket money thing, if you wish, although a very good one. So Eddie thought, well, I think it's done what it needs to for him. So Eddie took a well-deserved backseat. He's still there. I do talk to him. He's quite well. He normally goes away at Christmas and goes over to Spain. He hasn't been this year for a few little reasons, but he's still there. Great friend of mine. Love him to bits. And I wouldn't be in the position I am today without him and us initially talking. So I owe a lot of this to Eddie. So tip me out to Eddie St. Clair, top man. So that's a lot of me.
Yes. Now, if we wind it back to, I suppose, mid to late 90s, I was lucky enough to be gifted a Sony Handycam.
Yes. Yeah.
And they had night vision.
Mm.
setting on
They
them.
had a feature called Night Shot.
Yes, and you got little cat's eyes glowing in your screen. Now it was fantastic around the house, and maybe a garage, not much bigger than a shed. And I had the bright idea. You could set up the camera and scan a field, and have the little red laser pointer, and then your shooting buddy would see where the laser is, roughly line up with the scope, flip the torch on, shoot the rabbit or the rat, job done. Now, the only problem I had was the only way of doing infrared light back in those days was infrared plastic sheeting, like Perspex for black, mounted onto a car spotlight, and it was normally a
Yes.
rectangle one because it's easier to cut perspex square. And then you still got all the hassles of the wires and a 12-volt battery to carry around, and that was the only downside we had. But it worked for a little while until the camera died. I think it was just we burnt it out with so much infrared light pouring in there.
Yeah.
But that worked for good 18 months, if not 2 years. And previous to that, it was the old car spotlights, motorbike
Yeah.
battery, ice cream tub on your belt, acid everywhere, three different
Absolutely.
coats a year,
Yeah.
and it was a nightmare. So I'm grateful that technology has moved on to where it is today, just for the sake of buying clothes and belts and ice cream pots and motorbike batteries and all the rest of
But
it.
yeah, I mean, talking about that, and old days of doing exactly that. I can remember having a lead acid battery leak on my trousers. Oh, blimey. I was so glad when sealed batteries came out. But yeah, it's the type isn't it, of how this thing's evolved.
Yeah,
I mean, historically, it takes us back to sort of World War II type thing with regards night vision in a way, but very, very crude, very, very crude. And we look where we've come to now, where infrared in a way, but thermal. You could have a thermal camera fastened to your phone that far, far, far exceeds anything that we could have ever dreamed about with
so I'm just
regard
going to move me over a bit there.
with regards to walking around with a car headlamp fastened to a 12-volt battery. It's phenomenal, isn't it? Absolutely phenomenal.
It is, and I think it's a game changer. And the youngsters coming through today that are shooting and lucky enough to shoot haven't got a clue how much hassles we used to have.
Oh, blimey. The thing with technology, I mean, we're always chasing it. Doesn't matter what it is, does it? Don't matter whether it's a microwave oven or air fryers or whatever it is. We always chase this technology. The old stuff still works, and it still works as well as it did. That spotter still
Yeah,
works as well as it did when you got it 10 years ago. But we chase stuff because things become better with regards what capabilities that they've got. I mean, I certainly don't sell as many of the screen style kits as I used to, which were sort of an adaptation of that spotter that you've got that fastened to the back end of a scope. But I still do sell them. And I sell them for lots of different reasons as well. One of the main ones is a training aid for children. When they start to want to learn how to shoot, the hardest thing really is actually getting to talk to them and look to them. How are you looking through? Because nearly every gun these days has got a telescopic sight on it, hasn't it? It's
yeah,
very rare you get open sights on guns these days. So the biggest thing trying to teach a youngster is how are they looking? Where are they looking? What are they seeing of that set of crosshairs? Have they got their eye too far forward, too far back? So there's certainly a range up in Scotland that I donated a couple to, and I think they've still got them. And they use them for teaching kids. There's loads of photographs of the kids at air rifle ranges, and literally, they're used to screens, aren't they? Everything's a gadget in the hand.
yeah.
So where they try and look through a scope and they're trying to sort of get their head in right position, and you might be trying to teach them, it doesn't matter what you show them, it's up to them as an individual then to get the head in right place to have a successful shot. Stick one of my kits on back of a telescopic sight, they're away straight away. They're onto a winner. They're 10 out of 10. Every shot's a winner. So that they learn the scope. So you can teach them hold over. You can teach them hold under, because they recognise that screen type of system. Once they know hold over and hold under, etc., then you take that away and they can learn where to position their eye to see that same image that they've seen on the screen. So I
Yeah.
still sell a lot to clubs for youngsters, using them that way. Visually impaired people, I still sell them for visually impaired people that can't use scopes and that still use a screen type of system. So certainly not as busy with regards to the screen kits as I ever used to be, but they are still out there. Um, and I'm still here in comparison to, and it's a sad thing to say, Nightsight, that were a fabulous company, that were probably the most renowned screen type kits that the UK's known. And they were global, what they went under. So as an independent, I'm pretty proud to still say that, yeah, I'm still part of that dinosaur thing that does make some kits with the screens.
I was just about to say, I have Night Sight 200 kit here
Yeah,
that still works, still runs, and courtesy of a certain night vision company, I saw these cute little battery packs for it.
yeah.
Don't know where I got them from, but I'll
Well,
remember in a minute.
yeah. I mean, I think I ended up with, um, through a variety of different contacts, a guy called Terry Goodwin who used to own the factory that supplied Nightsight with all the plastic casings and a variety of things. I think I ended up with basically the end of the spares and accessory stock within the UK. So I still do repairs on Nightsight, screen swaps, etc., etc. I've probably got last hoard of spares, the tubes and various other things, the screen clamps. In fact, I've probably still got a couple in here from earlier on today. I have. A guy was asking me if I'd got one of the screen pod holders that goes around your scope. So,
Oh yeah.
old Nightsight one. So if anybody's after Nightsight old one repairs, NS50s, 200s, Vipers, Wolf Eagles, I'm still here. Still here.
I'll be sending my 50 camera up to you because that's not working currently.
So there's a lot of water gone under the bridge and a hell of a lot of technology in
Well,
just
with
our
the
time.
yeah, with the night sight, I found it was great years ago teaching my children because as a shooter, you lift the rifle up, everything is here. Nobody else can see what you can see. And
Yeah,
it allowed people stood to the left, to the right, behind you, um, a view of what you were seeing. So
absolutely.
when they were learning to come out with me and do a bit of rabbiting, and when they weren't too scared of the dark and all this like kids are,
Yeah,
they could see what I could see. And
yeah,
then I was using, because the NS200 unit was a day camera as well. So
yeah,
I could then use that daytime, even though it's a bit cumbersome, but it allowed me to show the children there's a rabbit. I can look with my eyes, he's 40 yards away, right? So on the crosshairs, he will fill up
yeah,
between that post there, or that dot, this dot, and then you can see it on the screen exactly where I'm going to aim, and just there we go.
yeah,
And it was a fantastic bit of kit. I've got hard 007 and the 008 units here. And
yeah.
it's gone back to just my site only type thing.
But the thing
I
with
know,
those units, though, you can cast out to your phone or a tablet,
yeah,
can't you? So that, although there's a bit of delay, at least with the newer units these days, the technology does allow you to have a second person view, doesn't it?
yeah.
So that,
It's also handy if you think you've missed whatever, isn't it? It's there to be seen.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of technology. I wish I'd got the money I'd spent on experimenting and buying parts and components and everything else. Blimey, phenomenal.
Well, I made myself a rig years ago. It was a 5 watt fog light, rear fog light, and then a car driving rally light, square one, on a frame. We held together with bits of tape and wires, and I had top switch and a bottom switch. So to see where I was going, because down in Cornwall, some of the land's a bit rough and
Oh yeah,
twist your ankle, whatever. So I had the bottom switch for just this rear fog light, which casts this lovely red glow. And then I can either leave it on or switch it off. And then I've got the main spotlight on top as well, which I then used to use for shooting. hold it like this, with the rifle then laying on my wrist, all the battery pack kitted to me as well. And the only problem you used to have was about 8 feet of blooming wire that used to get tangled.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But yeah, but it worked, and it worked for me for years like that.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean,
I was gifted an old Blue Light. I think it was the CB2, the old 4 inch
oh yeah,
round, the plastic
yeah,
handle. And that was so much lighter, but it only didn't have the filter for it, so it's just white light. So
yeah,
some things got a bit lamp shy.
they do.
They do. And by chance, I was on a group the other day. Shall we say it's for old countrymen and leave it at that?
Yeah,
Um, and somebody said, "Oh, I've just been gifted this by the old boy down the road. What is it?" And of course, it's one of these Clue Light CB2 lights. And I was like, "Oh my god, that brings back memories, 1980s, that rabbiting and all this, and then the dog
yeah.
and all this sort of stuff." I was like, "1980s, I was still using one in 90 something."
Yeah, I mean, you look now back over articles and things and the magazines over the years, and you see things, and you see old advertisements, and you'll see basically a car headlamp with a red filter on top of your rifle for lamping, and you think, my God, how far have we come? You know,
Yeah,
it did its job, and now you can go out and buy a little handheld torch that does the same thing and only costs you threepence, doesn't it? You know, it's phenomenal.
yeah. Some of these new torches, like a mile beam at like 50,000 lumens and stuff. That's really stupid, but.
Yeah,
You
I
can
mean,
use this torch to set fire to stuff. It's like, really? Why me? I only want to see where I'm going.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, the technology changes drastically. I mean, um, this is how small stuff gets. I mean, I didn't realise this was here, honestly. But that spotter that you've got, I've been sent one through a little while since, and this was pre-parred. Um, we're talking about designs and things. So your little that handheld unit that you've got, this is something similar. You could go and mount it if you wanted to, but I wouldn't want to. It's a spotter that you can look in back end of it. It's got two different IRs, 850 and 940. It records, runs about 8 hours off a single 18650 battery. You can plug a screen into it. It's like, and it's peanuts.
Yeah,
It cost wise, it would be, you couldn't build one of these if you tried to buy the components, which is why I sort of moved away slightly from what I were doing. Um, During the COVID style of stuff, when we sort of all shut down and you couldn't get components and various other things, and the market's changed. China were phenomenal with what they did. That was a very clever time period for them. They spent a lot of time looking at what other industries were doing. They'd got all the component bits and everything else and thought, okay, well, what we can do actually, if we spend all this time learning what other people are making and selling, we'll put the prices up for components, but we'll make them ourselves. So the
yeah,
screen style stuff started changing and everything else. Um, I'd made, to give you an idea, like the pod units, before the pods came out, I'd made an inline one that I took down to Stoneleigh one year, called it the Artemis. And there were a few others making similar inline things. We'd use camcorder viewfinders and all sorts of things to make that the eyepiece and then fasten onto the back. And I took it to show. Everybody were interested. Been a couple of magazines. We're going to release it, and then sort of things changed around, and they came out with the Pard 007. It wasn't called Pard then. Totally different name altogether. Nobody really knew of it. I could buy them cheaper than I could buy the components for to
yeah,
make my. So it was like, Pete, you're wasting your time here making this. You know, it's it'll last for a little while, but industry changed phenomenally. It's I can't say as I've seen technology change in one area quite as fast. Phones do, that is for sure. But night vision, wow, unbelievable.
when you consider, I don't know where it is, somewhere here, I've got an original green um, Iris night vision,
Oh yeah,
Gen 1.
Gen 1,
And
that
yeah,
one there was
power it
Gen
up,
5.
wait 5 minutes for it to start glowing. It gets greener, greener, greener. And then you release the button, and it'll glow and glow again. And
Yeah,
then you push the button again and get to 3 seconds and glow, and then it glows again. And
yeah,
you think years ago that was it, and that was like top military spec like during the 80s, and then they went to Gen 2, then Gen 3, and then we heard about Gen 1 stuff where you could buy Gen 1 stuff like this. And in that short space of 15 years, we're now onto color, um,
yeah.
night vision, and thermal, and like these starlight cameras, like the BBC Wildlife
Yeah,
uses. The I was watching leopard hunt the other day, and the cameraman's there. He stopped. You can't see it, but the moon's come out, so he's lied down. The
yeah,
moon got covered in cloud again, like in a horror movie, and he got up and stalked a bit closer to the gazelle. Then he lied down again, and the cameraman's, yep, the moon's coming out again. And the leopard's not watching the gazelle in front of it; it's watching what the moon's doing over there. And
yeah,
as soon as it got 15 meters away, it just sat there.
yeah,
And the gazelle's like, there's something wrong, but I don't know what. And the starlight camera is showing its fur twitching on its
yeah,
haunches. And the leopard's like, dinner time. Boom, that was it, done. But
yeah.
it was marvelous to watch how it actually hunts by watching the moon get cover and
Yeah.
then going and waiting its time. And it's like, I
Well,
never had seen that, never witnessed it
invisible to
before,
us
never
for
seen it.
years. Invisible to us for decades, hasn't it? We've not been
Yeah,
able to experience that. So, I mean, that in a way brings in another side of my business now, which we said the wildlife and the ecologist side of stuff. A lot of my business now is associated with not necessarily the pest control, but the wildlife protection, the
yeah,
habitat protection. Uh, in fact, I'll be coming sorted down your way, Bristolish in March, for a bat in ecologists conference about technology. So I've sort of moved in direction. Some of mine's in search and rescue. Our earlier on in the year, well, the tail end of last year, international flood fighters conference, discussing thermal equipment that the fire and rescue are using for various things. So the stuff moves on. But like your example with that leopard and things like, we've only just been able to learn new things about the wildlife that's out there purely
yeah,
because of these technology changes. I mean, the image intensifying stuff used to be the bee's knees, didn't it? If you were
yeah,
ever going to get to the top of it, um, you ended up, I suppose, in a way. There are lots of other ones like the kite, but everybody went. If you went like the image intensity, you went through. You had an archer,
yeah.
and you had the what was it called, dragonfly, the little IR that they had with them, and you went that sort of direction because that were the bee's knees. And then the digital wise, it were through the drone side of stuff and that way. But the image intensifying stuff these days, you see very little of it. You do see the clip-on stuff like the PVS 14 style things, and I think who's got them these days? Nightmaster. I think Nightmaster still do something similar. I think I might be wrong, but I think they still do a similar sort of thing through the PVS style. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not very often you see image intensifier stuff these days. Not now the digital cameras have got to the level that they've got, like the Sony Starvis cameras these days. I mean, there are a lot more others as well, but people probably recognise the Starvis name. They're just phenomenal.
The only downside I found with all this technology is night vision still sees as two-dimensional,
Yes,
and
yeah,
you can get whited out by like weeds and hedges and stuff like that, which drives me nuts, especially down in Cornwall here. And the other problem is if you're looking at land that undulates,
yes,
excuse me, and you get, say, a fox or rabbit on that undulation, you might as well be a cardboard cutout for the school play because you've got no depth or no perspective, and
yeah,
it can literally just go over that rise and that's it gone. And the same with thermal. We're seeing a lot more people. Oh, little tiny white blob. Oh yeah, that's a fox at 150 yards. Prove it.
yeah. I think
And you know,
I think with regards thermal, I think we are definitely seeing a change away from that, where the sensors that are used, um, not just that, but the resolutions of the screens, because it's no good having an amazing sensor if your screen's rubbish as well,
no,
and vice versa. Um, where we're getting now, that the screens that you're looking at are phenomenal, or the sensors that are potentially available, again, phenomenal. Everything else, the latency thing, all the rest of it, all the technological associated with it. Now you get some of the thermals. I won't mention potentially any brands, but you look at some and you think, well, let's say it's in black hot, not one of the colour palettes, but when it's in black hot or white hot, I've looked at some and I honestly would say, is that night vision? Is that infrared? And I know it's not, because I know it's the thermal unit, but some of the imagery that you can now see with some of the thermals, it supersedes what we would have had years ago with the infrared night vision kits. It's changed drastically.
The name is a new one they launched the other day. I think it was either Scott Country or one of the other big names. It's half thermal, half night vision, and it can sort of like combine the two images. And the
Right.
images is incredible coming off it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, if we're all right, we're mentioning brands. I mean, this is my stockroom as well as office, so it is strategically placed. But I don't sell Beatles, by the way. And no, when you first thought it might have been Blues Brothers, you were right. I'm into Blues Brothers as well. The DNT optics, which were originally Arcan and another name as well before that. They've now got a multispectral unit, which is day-night vision and thermal. And, as you say, green Peter, not blue Peter. I have one here. So this is one of the latest offerings. This one's been around for a little while. This is the ThermNight. This is the original unit, the TNC 225R. So this is multispectral, as it's a day scope, so full colour. Can be used as night vision, but it's also thermal as well. So you've got a thermal lens, an optical lens, and then, as we were saying earlier on, you're saying about your fox on the undulation and skylining and trying to judge depth and perspective. You've got a rangefinder, you've got a ballistic calculator built in, sends it to your phone, it records, you can slot it's just unbelievable. So this unit, the TNC 225R, this was the first one that they released. It came out at British Shooting Show last February. They took it down there then. We waited through till probably about July, August-ish before we got his hands on it for real. Although I had been kept in touch with the team at DNT. I know Ryan Lee, one of the directors, and Mr. Bin Song, main man. Know them personally. I've met up with them. In fact, I will introduce you to a good friend of mine, Andrew Dickinson. He's now the UK DNT Optics representative. You'll get on really well with him. He'd be a very interesting guy for you to chat to and do a podcast with. So I sort of introduced Andrew to DNT, and I've kept in touch with DNT, and I'm an obviously authorised salesperson for them. But this thing, if you consider that this is £1,000, we used to spend half of that on buying like a Yukon Photon.
Yeah.
And we spent half of that on buying well, more than that, £600 and £700 on a night sight Eagle, something like that.
Yeah.
So now we've got a unit that not only is it a night vision kit, you can use it in day, but you've got thermal built into it. It's just, where do we go? I mean, this week should be here tomorrow. I've got the next 2 units up from this, but they haven't just changed the sensor. This was the thing is, a lot of companies, they bring in a model, don't they? What happens next week? As soon as you bought it, next one's coming out. All they've done is change the sensor. These guys have waited and waited. They've listened to everything that's been mentioned, all sorts of things. Battery, how the buttons work, functionality, rangefinder, where it sits, also. They've listened to all of that. And then they've sort of redesigned it. And they added in other features where if you put your eye to it, it switches on. Move your eye away, it switches off. It'll stop and start recording. They've changed the way that the rangefinder fits on the side, so it's angled slightly. so that they can then accommodate a bigger battery for longer run time. They've not just said, right, okay, we bought this out, it's been successful, we're going to bring next one out with just a bigger sensor. They've
Yeah.
done what we would like as users, and advanced forward. They've gone a step forward, not just left it same old shell and chucked some more components in where we might feel, right, I've only just bought this and now is the next one. So I've got, should be here probably tomorrow, I've got the 335 and the 635, which are redesigned units, better sensors, different thermal side of stuff, but they're phenomenal. It's, as I say, I won't call myself a professional with regards to this industry, because I don't do a lot of shooting. I do, but I go out more with friends when I get opportunity. I'm not out day to day, so I'm not a day-to-day user. I'm experienced with it. I'm very knowledgeable with regards to it, but there's no way I could say I've got the experience that you've got on your shooting side. But I can bring that together. I've got the other skills that can combine that and bring that together and compare it. I've not seen, as I said it earlier, as much technological advances as we're seeing now within businesses, where, as well, PARD, for example, they brought out the 007, variety of different adaptions. They added laser rangefinders to them. Then they bring out the 008s, and then people are saying, well, we still like the scope styles. So, okay, we'll sort of abandon the 008 style and we'll go to the DS, which was the scope one. Came out and it looked a bit like USS Enterprise with the two front fronds on it. One's the rangefinder, one's the IR. And you look now at stuff, I mean, oh dear, what did Andy Barker buy the other day? I think it was a Pulsar. And the Pulsar's all singing, all dancing, thermal. It's got built-in rangefinder at front end, everything, and it's like, where can we go from here? We've not hit the limit. It's only purely going to be in quality of image, feedback to the eye, to the screen, better with regards ballistic calculation and things that way around. But it's like walking into a sweet shop. It's phenomenal what there is available, and you don't have to spend a fortune. You can, and very, very easily, and you can spend it unwisely. But if you take your time and don't rush into these things, there's some fabulous kit to be made available to you. And last year's models still work amazing. That your spotter, 10 years on. So we don't have to be afeared of buying older technology. Just beware of who is still servicing, who is still available to do warranty and things. I think, I will mention this slightly, but I think Sportsman Gun Centre took over the sole importer rights to PARD at one point, but I don't think they're doing it now. So I don't think, I can't recall at the moment who's doing any support for PARD in the UK. Certainly not Sportsman's Gun that way round. So there's lots of good stuff to be had second hand that were brand spanking new 12 months since.
Yeah.
For some phenomenal savings. And I think that we're going to see that for a long period of time as well.
So getting back to you, a coal miner. So
Yeah.
did you leave school and they just threw you down the pit and get on with it later?
Well, quite strange. My desire, this would probably interest you, but my desire while I was at school, quite strange. I wasn't a typical man's son, if you wish. Metalwork didn't sort of it weren't a big interest for me. Brickwork and things like that, and woodwork did, because I could create something out of a piece of wood. I could do that in my hands. I couldn't do that with a piece of metal. So I like the arts, I like the crafts, but I was really, really interested in cooking. So my main thing when I was at school is that when you got chance, to give you an idea, I left school in 1980 when I was 16. So when you get to choose your subjects when you go to big school, last 4 years, I did what we called home economics, which for anybody else it was called cooking.
Yeah.
But you learnt about buying food, you learnt about creating menus, but I were also one of only 2 boys that ever at that school as well. I were at a place in Bolsover at the time. Um, Moorfield County Secondary School, it were, then came Bolsover School. I were one of only 2 boys that did needlework. So I learned to do home economics, cooking. I learned how to hand wash my clothes, iron my clothes, put proper creases into them. I learned how to darn my own socks. You don't do that these days. You go to Primark and get 10 for £1, don't you?
Yeah.
So when I were at school, I really fancied catering industry in some way. And my idea was that I thought that maybe one of the forces might be the sort of direction to go, but do the catering. And at my nana's partner at the time, Eric, his name was, he'd been in forces, that had been his industry. And he said to me, and I don't feel any shame in this because that's how I was a youngster. He said, I talked to him for hours about it, and he said, look, he said, I don't mean to sound disrespectful, he said, but your dad can make you cry. How do you think you'd go on in a knit forces? And I thought, well, he's right. I'm not very good with discipline. I was quite a gentle kid, if you wish. If people talked to me sternly, I used to cry. I weren't good at it. I didn't know how to handle it. So I understood what he was saying. He wasn't saying it wasn't good. He was just saying, I'm not sure if it's the right thing for you. But he said, I think the idea of catering is a great idea. Look at other things. So at one point I went on a visit to, it was called Harper Hill College, Buxton Catering College it was called, in Derbyshire. Went there for a visit, and I loved the idea. Thought that was going to be great. So I'd gone all the way through, and you get to your final exams after you've done it, and I was good at it. I was good at cooking. You get to go to your exams, and on the morning of my exam, well, I thought my exam was afternoon, and I used to suffer badly at the time with migraines, and I'd had a really, really bad day. And my migraines, when I was a kid, used to be terrible. I used to have to get back at settee and I'd feel nauseous. It used to be shocking. And I thought, right, okay, I'm not going to go to school in the morning. I don't need to. My exam's in the afternoon. So I strolls in the afternoon for my exam. And my cooking teacher at the time, Mrs. Hayter, her name was, where have you been? I said, what do you mean? Where have you been? So I just weren't very well. If I need a note, I'll bring it in. You missed your exam. So what do you mean I've missed my exam? She says, you've missed your exam. The exam was this morning. I said, no, it's this afternoon. I've got it written down. I'd written it down wrong, so I'd missed the cooking exam. So I didn't get any of the qualifications for my home economics, my cooking, my needlework and shit like that. So it was like, okay. They gave me, they did, I couldn't reapply to do it. They wouldn't let me reapply to do the test again, which would, I couldn't understand that at the time. And quite some time after, I was given the paper that somebody had for the exam, and I got something like 95%. So talk about wished I'd never been given it. So I didn't know what to do, because you'd got to get certain bits to get into Buxton and everything else, and I'd worked for a couple of friends that had got businesses in catering industry, baking really more than anything. I used to stand markets with my mother at Ashbourne, Bakewell and Warsop and a few other places. Had some rough winters in Ashbourne, I'll tell you. Worked summer holidays in his bakery making cakes, and I think that's where I got some of my shape from at one point, making coconut covered bloody cakes, sponge cakes.
Battenberg.
Yeah. So I still weren't sort of sure what I wanted to do. I was still two minds. So I just applied for any jobs, anything. So I applied to local engineering companies, and I'd got 3 jobs offered me, and I still didn't know what to do. I didn't know anything about engineering. And I got chatting, and my dad sort of said to me, he'd worked for British Coal Board, but he worked on transport side, so coal lorries and bagging and things like that. And he said, look, he said, I don't want you to go down the pit. He said, but you could get a good apprenticeship, do management side, and you know, you've got to go somewhere else. But it's a job for life, lad. Blimey. So from 1980 to 1993, that was my job for life. 93 comes around, coal mining industry shut down and gone. The companies that I applied to at the time for the apprenticeships and the engineering, I chose not to go there because they were so closely connected with the government at the time, doing lots of work for nuclear power stations. I just thought, this government changes, they're out on their ear. They're still going. They still run apprenticeships, which is these days you just don't hear of them. So
No.
it's like that company's still there in existence, and me deciding to go to British Coal, job for life, but it didn't matter, because it gave me the grounding that I needed, it gave me the training, it gave me the health and safety, it gave me the first aid, it gave me a lot of knowledge and information, taught me techniques and skills. I learned a lot of stuff from people that I would never have been able to learn from before. There's not much chance for you to learn or to use blowing up skills, so I can I've got skills for blowing up stuff with dynamite and everything else, but you don't use them very much these days.
Well, you're down in Bristol in March.
So when I left there, I had 12 months sort of unemployed. I had a letter come through that said, if you're interested in self-employment, we'll give you some cash. So I just thought, well, at the moment now I left in 93 in January. My lad was born in August. So I'm like, okay, my wife at time school teacher, she's gone back to work. And they were telling me I could have 12 months worth of training. Here's some more money for nothing. I'd had my redundancy. Seems to work well for me. Okay, I'll look at being self-employed. They said you could have this much cash. That they were throwing money at you. British Coal Enterprise Allowance Scheme. So I went on this course thinking, well, it's free money. You're going to pay your national insurance stamp. You've only got to set yourself up in business. Only thing where I got no idea what business I was going to do. So I went on this thing and I started up doing something called pyrography, because when they were going around the room they were chatting about what your hobbies were. So I turned what was my hobby then into a business just to get self-employed. So I started in 93. The accountant that were on this course delivering and doing the training about being self-employed, he just started same. He became self-employed. I was his first client and I'm now his last one because he's just retired. So I went into health and safety. I did my own training company. I was doing CPR training, defib training. I was emergency responder with NHS near Rotherham. So I volunteered going out for emergency stuff, working in or delivering training to personnel within care industry, heavy industry, steel industry, manual handling, teaching people clients handling technique, all sorts of stuff. And then, as I say, the accidental thing with the night vision. So I just thought at the time, well, the training can always be there. I can always go back to that. I'll just have a look at this night vision and see what it's like. Because it got to the point where we'd been teaching people how to build their own stuff, talking to people about everything, and they kept saying, oh, build me one. I don't want to, I ain't got time. I've got my own business. Go on, Pete, build us one. No, ask Eddie. Eddie will build you one. Or, look, we've got all the plans for you to build it. We even give you a list of everything to buy. I think it's still in the group now. Oh, you build me one, Pete. So it got to the point where I said, oh, all right. And I started building kits, and it went phenomenal. And it was from there, it was sort of, I got a lot of stick at time from different people in different places saying, oh, it nicked ideas and now he's made a business out of it. Didn't nick anything, everybody was sharing stuff. I just did the next step and made it into a business. And it just evolved from there, just kept going and just kept going. And I just thought, while ever this ship's floating, I'd like to be a part of it. And I'm still here. So I can always go back to the training. And I've been all over the country doing that. That was phenomenal. So I've had a change around of sort of careers, if you wish. People said, I still see some people from when I worked at Pitt. Still talk to a couple. One of my mates is in Vietnam. He's lived out there a number of years. And I know a lot would go back to it. I wouldn't personally. I feel I was very lucky. I came away very beneficial with regards to my health. No ill health as far as I'm aware. no long-term stuff, no limbs missing, no nothing. I wouldn't like to put myself in that position that I took in 1980 as a 16-year-old kid to go back underground and put myself at risk again. They're certainly not at my age now. I mean, I'm 60 now, 61. But yeah, I've not really had many jobs. I always say that I stopped working. My last hard work was in 1993. So yeah, it's a limited career, but very wide in the knowledge and the sphere that I've sort of took on board. That is for sure. I do feel very fortunate, I must say.
Just to make you feel old, Pete, I left school in 92.
In when?
92.
92. Jeepers, thanks a lot for that. Yeah, my word. Thanks ever so much. Yeah, I'd worked out pit for 12 years then. Thank you very much indeed.
It's all right. When you first stayed down pit, I celebrated my 4th birthday.
Well, no, I was just going to say you must have been late leaving school. You must have been 28 when you left school.
Yeah, hard paper round.
Oh dear. But yeah,
Uh,
I haven't done many sort of jobs. I've worked in local stores, things like that, part-time jobs, part-time job, Waitrose, all sorts of other little bits like bolt-ons. But unfortunately, this sort of sustains itself. But I've had to diversify. I've had to. So the screen stuff, as I've said, still doing some of that for various reasons. I think one of the most, well, I'll say infamous photos for me, and it's been in a few magazines, and a few other people have seen it. Some years ago, a shooting place down south towards Hastings, they've got like an indoor place that does like, I think it's called something like 1066, and they do like axe throwing and all sorts of things. And they had a young lady, they have got an indoor live round shooting range, but she's a wheelchair user, cerebral palsy, scoliosis of the spine. So for her to be able to shoot a rifle indoors from using a wheelchair was just about impossible. So the guys there some years since approached me and said, Pete, have you got any ideas? We've seen your kits, we think somehow we might be able to. So I quite simply said, yeah, all we need to do is work out a system of maybe making a mountable, stable platform off of her wheelchair in some way, shape or form, whether that's a table or not, whatever, how we do it. We have one of my kits on the back of a scope and she does it that way around. And there's a fantastic photograph of the back of her using the kit. And that gave the opportunity that she'd wanted to have in her life. That to me, that sort of lots of things I've done, that to me were a very, very precious thing, that just something that I've done in my life, just one of these cheap old kit things, gave her that real opportunity. So that one photograph for me, it's very precious, very precious.
a lot of people moan, oh, hunters are cruel and shooting's barbaric. But it's one of the only sports I know that can bring able-bodied, non-able-bodied, very disabled, blind, deaf, and a whole host of other ills, ailments, everything else together to compete, isn't it?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, if you look at the Paralympic side of things and everything else that we've got, whether that's maybe, well, look at some of the bow people, the archers that we see these days, seem phenomenal. I'm not quite sure on the correct terminology these days, but multiple limbless people that maybe hold the bow with a foot and the string tether in the mouth and hit a gold at 50 yards. That's just on archery. You look at the other stuff that we've got, field sports and things that way around, the opportunities there. They are in other sports as well, but certainly with the field sports, the shooting side of stuff. I mean, they're on a sort of similar comparison, but moving to the other side of my industries as well. For me, one of the hard transitions has been moving into the ecology. And in fact, the bat thing I'm going to now, I'm supposed to be writing up something to give a bit of a resume about myself and the business to do with bats and ecology. So the gentleman's been looking at my website to see whether he can get some information, because I've just sort of run out of time. I've got to get it done tonight and tomorrow. And there's not really much about ecology on my website. So when I've been sort of evolving and going into ecology, being invited in by some real top people, and supply a lot of equipment to them these days, and they say, "Oh, what's your website?" And I must say I've been slightly lacking in updating it. So the first thing, unfortunately, they'll see if they go to NVUK would be some rabbits and things like that being shot. There isn't much ecology. So there's a lot of hatred, if you wish, or distrust in both industries. So it's like, oh, we don't want this guy because his main industry is to do with shooting. But then there's a hell of a lot of professionals within ecology that will say, just a minute, hang on. If we didn't have these guys that wanted this equipment, we'd never see that within our businesses.
No.
So some of them are very thankful that because we've got our need and desire for what we may need within our industries, they then get the transformation into theirs. And if I remember rightly, the show that I'm going to be doing, I think Thomas Jack's going to be down there. So at this next one, so it shows you the diversity that we do have to go through. But to say it's like we're saying with regards to the sports and what becomes available to people through shooting, we can move into other industries with it and other dimensions with it if we're cautious and accepted. So it's I mean, you yourself have been involved with regards things over the years for bringing young people in and other things into industries, which great respect to, which is where I first sort of met you.
You were loitering like Delboy, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the oldest Rodney going. Hey, do you want to buy some night vision? I've got some lovely night vision here in my suitcase.
Yeah. So you've done your share of it, and I've had that wonderful opportunity within my business to do the same. But it's there's so many opportunities out there to be gained, and I've supplied businesses that do get involved with youth groups. There's an organisation that just excuse me a minute because I need to tell you his name. It's a double barrel whammy. Hang on. Excuse my ignorance. I just need to look his name up.
That's right.
Right. So when it comes up on Messenger, I always smile at it. It's Stephen Gregory De La Rosa. So his name's Stephen Gregory. He's up in Scotland, and he's been I will call him a friend. We've never met. He's been a customer of mine for years, and they were involved with an organisation, I think it's called Under the Trees, and they're they have kids associated with taking them out, doing like nighttime observations, wildlife watching. They do all sorts of stuff. So once more, the equipment that we're using for what we do brings in children into that environment, not to shoot anything, but to watch, to learn, to see. And again, you've had them rewards. I know you've had them when I'm sure you've had with your own kids as well. When you see the bloody faces light up, and not from screen at Kate, but you know, from the joy that they've experienced this thing. Like you were on about the leopards and things, you know, we've now got this technology, but when you can get kids out in field using some of this technology, you only need one of them to get a spark of an idea in their head, don't you, from seeing some of this stuff, to then become a part of industry in whatever way, to take it forward, to take it and change it. So yeah, I mean, it's like you mentioning sports people, country people, Olympians. We need as well, let's say an industry, the countryside industry as a whole, not just the tunnel vision that we're talking about this evening. The industry as a whole. But if we can keep ourselves together and combine, which, in honesty, we've become fractions so many times over the years. We fight amongst ourselves about so many little tiny things. If we could become a one, and we won't. We keep fracturing. Look at pistols. Look at how pistols got banned, didn't they? You know, regards
Yeah.
that's that you can only have them for this and that. Oh, it'll not affect me. I'm not a pistol shooter. It won't ever happen. Look at lead. What about changes with lead and banning it? Oh, it'll never. Oh, well, it'll come. Might not affect maybe, let's say, air rifles, but we know that eventually certain things will come, and we're fracturing ourselves off. Whenever we can keep all these little lovely bits together, all these things that the kid groups like the under the trees that Stephen's associated with, the things that you've been associated with in the past, the things that everybody else does, whenever we can just keep them sparks of imagination going from something they've seen, something they've experienced, even, I mean, I know you love your cooking and everything else. Something you've tasted associated with something from the folk to field.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot more now with regards the game thing, groups, social media groups setting up that are about game for everyone, where game seems to have now, it's a strange thing, different conversation, and maybe a good podcast for you as well in future. It seems to be undervalued as a sale commodity for the guy that's harvesting it from the field. They don't seem to be, from my point of view, they don't seem to get the value for what it's worth. When it's in the shop, the price is phenomenal, but it's almost a waste commodity. You see people that are doing shoots for the weekend, they can't give pheasants away. You know, it's phenomenal. So you're getting people now that are setting up social media groups where it's passing on the game, if you wish, and various things like that. A few notable people that do very similar things, where they're allowing people to share what they've took off the field. That's had to be done for a reason. It's needed harvesting or control for a reason. Some of it can be put at food chain. It's not just to be put back out in field for foxes and badgers or done wherever else. It's human consumable.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a regeneration and an interest, I think, now in the game side of stuff. But I don't think it's changing the value. It's still almost like, well, if I can get it for free, why should I bother paying for it? So there's a double-edged sword for that as well.
I see a very fine line between, especially with the venison, oh, this is roadkill, so it must be for the dogs.
Yeah,
That's not roadkill, so that's now £15 a pound type thing. But the actual stalker is only getting £1 a pound
yeah,
either way, or a pound a kilo, whatever it is.
yeah,
It's very much like that, and it's always been like that. And this is the problem. Grouse shooting. I was chatting to Diggory Haydock in a podcast a couple of weeks ago.
yeah,
He's very affable and lovely, but he was going off in a couple of weeks with the guys from, I think it was like Holland or Purdy or somebody. Grouse shooting. Well, that's like 3 or 4 grand just for the weekend. I'm
wow,
not gonna be able to do it. The only grouse I see is when I walk past a bottle of scotch and Asda's. But pheasants, I can knock pheasants over with the air rifle on any of my shoots. But
yeah,
it's one of those things. But just to redirect with our industry, I think it
yeah.
must have been an old American advert or an older one for thermal,
Mm,
and construction workers. Is
yeah,
that tile? Gee, let's have a look through the flare. Oh, yeah, there's a heat source there. We're going
yeah,
to have a look at that tile. Is that wiring safe? We can scan the whole wire. There's a hot spot in there. Plumbers, you got a water leak? We don't know. Let's have a look. We can do it. Underfloor heating. We can see through this. Not a problem. And you got a
yeah.
happy
I
construction
must
worker. I
correct.
think.
That's the most directly USA accent I've ever heard.
It's terrible. I heard it myself. But I thought to myself, yeah, Fleur made a cracking thing for this advert. I could have sworn it was those hunters and shooters that helped Fleur make those bloody profits to do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's Flair have got sort of mixed histories as well, a lot along with a lot of other companies as well, like Armour Sights and various things that were very very popular, and then they pull out of the public access market and just go back to very commercial, industrial sort of things, and don't provide maybe shooting, hunting side. So we've seen a variety of things with that way around. Flare amongst others. Again, going back to the unit that I'd got, they were making either phones or cameras that were plug-in units to phones or other accessories. And they started up with sparks of ideas that were then took by other people, which then goes back to one of the other brands that I'd use these days. I think you've seen these before. I mean, I've not cabled this up properly, but on the X-infrared units, who's got these? Blimey, Dave Barham's got one of these. Who's his sidekick from Airgun World? Fishing Man.
Oh,
Terry Doe.
Terry.
Terry's got one of these. So there should be a cable that goes from here and goes into your phone. So you've got a thermal camera, plugs into your phone's your screen, does everything else, records it. So you've got a thermal camera that's far superior to, say, an £800, 900, well, we'll say £800 thermal monocular for like under 400 quid. Because it's using your screen's capability. It's got all your screen's high resolution. It's got all that. So that this little bit and the box of tricks that comes with it, the camera and everything else. Flare started off doing something similar to this. Other companies see it and everything else. Say this is one of the X-infrared ones, thermal master type ones. And these are so popular within not just our industry, for people that want to get into thermal, but into the ecology side of stuff, because you can fasten it to a tablet, you can fasten it to an iPad or something similar. You can sit it and they'll use it for doing their surveys at night time, for watching the bats or other wildlife, and it's affordable. Whereas before, with regards to thermal stuff, you needed to be spending £1,000 to get the lowest resolution unit possible, that where, as you were saying, there's a blob there and that's it. With this one, it's like you look at stuff and am I really looking at this in thermal? Like I said to you, not quite the same with that one, but some of the thermal stuff these days, you look at it and I honestly have thought it's like night vision quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, your flare stuff, do the same with that. I mean, I've got facilities management companies, property management companies that use them. Same sort of thing. Underfloor heating leaks. Local authorities that I supply them to, that use them for doing the out of building thermal leakage. So looking at your windows, how you look, where's it coming from? The search and rescue thing were great, because quite a few of the guys that are in search and rescue, when they do the flood fighters, they're associated with police force and various things. So I've had a few authorities that have reviewed them and used them. Some are, I'll say sort of, I don't know what right phrase is for the branch that they're in, but we'll say drug enforcement, because I don't know a better phrase, where they'll just have the camera in the phone and they'll go down the street in unmarked cop car, and they just go down the street looking, and they're looking for heat source coming through ceiling on roof. So that one that's like glowing in loft, okay, we might do that one a visit, and a few other reasons. But I mean, they've used them for search and rescue, water-wise, on boat and stuff, things like that. Rescue underground. I took them in tin mines underground in Cornwall to do surveys down there with them. So the stuff that you can use things for these days as well, it's just it's boundless.
Yeah.
We're talking shooting, we're talking pest control, we're talking vermin control, etc., harvesting, animal crop, all that side of thing. But the technology that we've got, as I say, the transition for me into the ecology has been a hard one, but very accepted by some of the top professionals. Very, very accepted, and I can't thank them enough in saying, well, look, you need to look past some of what Pete's business is about. And as I reiterate, because if we didn't have such as Fleur that were making this stuff, infrared, your pulsars,
Yeah.
thermtex, all the names that we've got these days that are out there. If we didn't have these making this for sort of our industry, the other industries wouldn't necessarily get them because nothing's made specifically for many other industries. It's made for us, but there's very, very limited stuff that's just made for, we'll say, ecology. You get stuff made for like underwater, you get stuff made for astrophotography, but it's the saving of the animals and the wildlife. There's not much specific made, so it's sort of
Nah.
our industry that then feeds down to theirs in a way.
Have you seen drone footage, normal camera and thermal, on crop fields and how the different parts of the field grow and heat up and all this?
Yeah, I
Very
find
interesting subject coming from the farming background down here. We don't get
yeah,
as many crop fields as say like Cambridge or anything like that. You know, 300 or 400 acres as a field, but it's a good way of seeing it. Once you get like grain 5 6 inches high, allowing for the pests eating it, like deer and rabbits and
yeah, yeah,
pigs
yeah, yeah.
and all the rest of it. They can put a drone over the entire crop field in a matter of minutes, and it'll do a thermal scan of where the hot spots in the field are, which
Yep.
shows good ground and bad ground, etc. But it also shows like a, I suppose if you stood up with your grass like this, or your
Yep.
corn like this, where it's not growing properly and everything else, and formidable, and it'll tell you exactly where it's going to grow and not going to grow. And they
I've
said
seen
to
one.
the farmer, that corner over there, from that oak tree up to there, nothing's ever going to grow there because those 3 trees are taking every single bit of nutrient out of your land there. You might as well just skip missing there and
Yeah.
just leave that as part of the headland, you know.
What one of the interesting, I haven't seen it much, but there's one guy that I do talk to. Um, he's got he's got several drones and he uses them professionally. One of the things that he's done with some of the farmers and agricultural things uh, is almost trying to identify water sources where the
Yeah.
ground temperature is different in different places where the water, and again you'll see the crops growing differently from water source, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean and again thermal again. How many times nowadays do you see, oh, my dog's gone missing, and it'll be thermal drone dog searching group, get in touch
Yeah.
with them, or somebody, unfortunately, a human's gone missing, and we'll no longer just need to rely upon police helicopter because they've historically been the only ones that you might say, and you'll get local people that the hobbyists, and they'll have a thermal drone of some
Yeah.
description, which beforehand would have had to be down to somebody hamming something together. I mean, the X-infrared that I work with, and Thermal Master, we've been trying to incorporate something, but at the moment it's sort of by the time we've done adding this and that and everything else, your weight of your drone's going up. So it then gives you limitations to who might use it. I mean, if you've got your drone, I don't know the ins and outs, but like your license and drone ID or whatever it is to fly it, then you're okay. But yeah, it's recently with the cold spells that we've seen lots of companies, might be agri-thermal or something like that as an example of a name, where they've been saying, if you want us to come out and help you, we won't charge you, we just want to show you, we can come and bring the drones up and we'll look for your sheep that buried in snow.
Yeah.
Now beforehand that would be up to a shepherd, and if possible he's got his quad bike or whatever else and he's out there and he's trying to find them. It's the diversity of what we've now got technology wise, it crosses so many borders and boundaries. It's incredible.
I follow a young man from America called Kendall Gray.
Right.
And he's just built himself an acre fish pond, so he can literally just go up his back garden basically and fish.
Yeah.
He's got 2 or 3 areas of woodland there, and of course, most of American woodland's a bit like Cornwall, just like this or like that. Anyway, he's a sneaky bugger. He's got a thermal drone, bought it off certain selling sites. He flies it over the woods in the morning and sees what deer are about on thermal, and then goes up in the afternoon and nobbles one. Saves him
No.
all that hassles of worrying about which piece of woodland to go to or whatever. He just flies around. Oh yeah, they're over in that corner today. Right, we'll head that way. And
Yeah,
brilliant, you know.
it's the opportunities for what comes out of our, I'll say our industry. It's phenomenal. When local authorities using stuff that have come uh, from our industry to check to see whether the central heating and the double glazing that they've fitted and installed to this council property is working.
No.
It's oh, but again, without one industry, there's a lot of others wouldn't get
No.
what they're getting at the moment. But only time
So
will
I got to
tell.
ask, Pete,
Go for it.
you worked at MPIT. Were you in the brass band? I've seen the movies.
Oh, blimey. Brassed off, fabulous, I must admit. Yeah. If I. I'm, good on, Greg. I'm more of a singer than an instrument player. I, I did take music at school, and I'd always been in choirs and things like that, and I've been in plays, but I'm more of a singer. When I was at school, they decided to set up a band, and I brought home a euphonium. And it was because that was the only bloody instrument that were left when everybody cherry picked everything else. And I blasted it. I sort of made some noise out on it, but I couldn't bother to learn it. It was just like, nah, that's not for me. I've had keyboards and things. When I was a kid, I always fancied to learn how to play organ. And I had a little Bon Tempi, little tiny thing when I was a kid. And my mum and dad bought me a piano when I was a kid. And I'd always wanted an organ, which for me, that were like, oh, that's not quite right. When I was a kid, I wanted a scale electric, but they bought me a bloody train set. So it's that sort of thing. You know? But not about it, I know this is sidetracking, but my mum and dad bought me a piano. And at the time, we lived in a little place called Bowles over Chesterfield in Derbyshire. And my dad being my dad and his mates and everybody can help you get something, can't they? So there's a village that's now knocked down but been rebuilt called Arkwright. And there's a guy that my dad knew had got a piano, and he said, you can have it for nothing. Your lad can have it. It's not a problem. All you got to do is fetch it. So my dad had only got an old, I think at the time he'd got a Zephyr Zodiac. Can't fit a piano in one of them. So as he does, can't nick a lorry from work, but he knows somebody with a tractor and a trailer, flatbed trailer. So we sets off from Bowles over to Arkwright, uphill and down Dale, get to this guy's house. My dad, oh dear, and his buddy threw this piano onto the back of this tractor flatbed, lashed it to it, and there's me, my dad and his mate coming back on back of this tractor in a flatbed, uphill and down Dale, and dad's there playing piano, dun, 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 which were great while you're going downhill, but when you went uphill they forgot to tight ropes. So it was more shoving piano back. But yeah, it had some giggles over the years, but I had an alter ego for a number of years. I was on circuit for a bit. I was doing DJ and karaoke video stuff. My alter ego is Pete Loaf, and I got through to regional finals, winning with regards to doing Pete Loaf.
Oh my days.
Mine's more singing than certainly brass bands, but yeah, that were part of my history. Yeah, so the brass band bit, yeah, I love that film. And it's a very reminiscent thing because it was a part of my history. I know people that were in that. But it's like at the time as well, different thing, but St John's were a massive thing. Every pit had its own division. Every pit had its own mine rescue team. Every pit entered competitions, etc. And again, although I wasn't in mines rescue, I was fortunate to do some training with them. I was a underground mines first aider. I did help with some very unpleasant experiences and rescues of people and helping first aid wise and things where most of them did survive. A couple of people that I did know that didn't. But without that life experience, I wouldn't be in the position that I had to set up my business doing the health and safety training, having the ability to be able to talk to people, go to shows, discuss things, be able to present stuff. Because I learnt all them as skills from being at well, what were NCB when I were a kid, Unkaba on side at lorries, and then British Coal. So a lot of it does revert back to I learnt a lot in that industry. Um, a lot to be thankful for. It gave me a lifetime of work. Not to do with that, but the skills it gave me. But yeah, the brass band thing. I don't think I've ever done the other bit of getting stripped off like steel workers did for Full Monty job.
Oh yes, they were good films, and they had their place, and they told the stories well, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of other industries, isn't there, that sort of went under the hammer. Look at them all.
Yeah.
Steel industry, textile industry, farmers these days. My God, they're getting hammered, aren't they? Every direction that you look
Yes.
at it, whatever it is, growing it, cost of growing stuff, harvesting it, getting it into marketplace, everything. And now you've got all that. Now they want to take it after them when they kick bucket. Don't pass it down because you inheritance tax and everything else. Blimey, that's another
I
podcast
understand.
altogether.
Yeah, I understand what they did with the inheritance tax, but they're taxing the wrong people. And like a farmer said, my combine is 500 grand. My tractor is 180 grand. I'm still paying for that bloody thing, he goes. My Land Rover, that's still on HP with the local motor company. Um, we hope to change that one every 4 years before the cow shit starts rotting it. It was his words.
Yeah,
But
they're not
then all the,
cashless, are they?
yeah, they're rich in one sense, but they're poor in another. And this is what,
Yeah,
oh, we had a load of comments, especially directed at the
you're still
farmers,
there, Greg.
all for this inheritance tax. Oh, yeah, rich farmers bleeding poverty. But it's not.
Yeah, when mine
Oh,
went off, it
Pete,
said you're no longer recording. Press to reset, so to stop recording.
gee.
Right.
Yeah, did you push a button? Oh, I don't know why. It's still recording my end. Yeah, so we had a lot of people moaning, oh, these rich farmers and everything else, but it's not. It's all assets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like people, your poll tax, you might live in a band B, but the house across the way is a band E or whatever, just because
Yeah.
it's got a slightly bigger garden. Well, farms are exactly the same. If you've got 6 extra sheds than the farmer down the road, you're going to be screwed. And this is a problem. And the rest of the world is laughing at us currently with our government doing stupid stuff
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
America,
We went
farmers have
out to
been in a recession
Colorado
for about 10
uh,
years, and they've
with
almost folded
was
out
it
there.
15, 16
With
days
the
or so.
Canadian wheat
Went out to
wars against
Colorado,
Russia and everything else back in the 80s,
Denver
it's now
area,
gone tits
Colorado
up over there,
Springs, all
basically.
around there. Ouray, Durango, um, and when you sort of get talking to people, interacting with people, and I mean, to me, it was just a phenomenal place to visit. When you sort of experiencing and looking and seeing the lifestyle, some of the agricultural areas and the size of the stuff that they're dealing with, the landscapes that you just can't see from one end to other, you know, and your sat nav it says turn right and continue for more than 147 miles. What? That's just a straight road, and all the way down side of it, you just got agricultural field. You know, it's just what they deal with to us we can't comprehend unless you've seen it. But yeah, it's there's so many other industries being battered, isn't there, over here, but within association of ours. Yeah,
Yeah. I follow a couple of the big, I say big, they're average size parlors out in America. One's Holstein Friesian cows, looks just very similar to us. He's got about 400 or 500 head, so fair few cows, same as my good sized British farm. And there's a guy, they're called DTF Honest Farming, and they got
Yeah.
jerseys, I think it is. They've got 1,200 Pete. They've got a rotary parlor. It's got 72 spaces on it, I think it is. And the cow literally goes in, 10 minutes later, it comes
Oh
back
yeah.
off again.
Yeah.
All automatic. There's a guy there just to make sure there's no hassles, nobody slips or falls, nothing like that. And it's all automatic. And they produce milk for like these co-ops, I suppose it is
Unbelievable.
basically. And
Yeah.
they some days can't produce enough milk for America.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, this
You
is just
see,
2 farms that I
like
follow,
some of the
and that's
literacy
like two and
groups
a
I
half
follow.
thousand cows in total.
There's
You
a
know,
local business,
stupid
and you
how
see
the
them
concept is
advertising,
America.
and they've got
I
like
don't know what America's current
um,
population is. It's over 60 odd
full of an
million, isn't it?
articulated lorry. I don't know proper word, but an open back lorry full of food waste. So and it's like full of, I don't know, could be pears, potatoes, watermelons, strawberries, full like a 40-ton truck type thing, like an old coal
Yeah.
fashion coal lorry, full of food waste, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's wrong shape, or the farmers had to grow that much because he's not quite sure of what the supermarket wants order wise. Is grown that much, but
Mm.
then the purchaser only wants this much, so he's ended up with glut that he's got to get rid of.
No.
And you see these companies that the food waste, it is like, okay, it's cattle feed. It's, it's it's sacrilege, absolute sacrilege. Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, I did a stint in between stints as a chef working for math years ago, back when we had the BSE. France and several other places had JCB. We had BSE. Um, Watching some of our best
mm,
cattle go to
yeah,
waste. 5, 6 year old prime beef. It was slashed, sprayed, and in a box, and it's gone. It's the only time that yeah, foot and mouth that I've seen farmers cry. You know, a lot of these farmers, granddad started off with one cow. Dad started off with 40 cows and had calves over the years and everything else. Of course, cows live 15 plus years mostly. And the farmer son has now got it 200 plus cows, whatever, knows every
yeah,
single one of them, knows all their young they've had and everything else. And he's coming in, and some bloke from the military said, "Sorry, all those cows and all those bullocks over there, they're going in the next week." And stood there crying. But we had uh, wooden crates. They were eight
yeah,
foot square, a bit bigger than what you see on the farms for potatoes. You could get 6 hinds of beef, which is like about an egg, in one of these, or 4 or 5
oh yeah,
four
yeah, yeah,
quarters, and they went in a bag and they were sealed with a lead like cable tie. The box had a cardboard lid that was stapled all the way around. It then had those horrible plastic straps
all
like your
right,
newspapers come in
yeah,
that you would get your bloody fingers on. They would then,
yeah,
it was all sprayed blue. No, it wasn't. It was sprayed yellow, sorry. And it's the same stuff that used to be an orange squash, like a beta carotene color. It was the offal, sorry, that was sprayed blue and all the heads and stuff. And
crazy,
they went into the back of Arctic lorries and went to a freezer facility somewhere in the middle of England. That was 1996, and I was chatting to a guy about 10 years ago. Do you know they're still there waiting to be destroyed?
yeah, yeah,
This place is the size of Wembley Stadium built underground as a
yeah,
giant freezer. And it's one of the intervention storage places they built after the war that was meant to be filled
yeah.
with beef just in
I
case we had another war.
Strange
It had
time.
never been used, a
Strange
bit like
time.
the big grain silo stores that we
And we
had.
have,
And so they filled it with all this bloody good beef that went to waste. Absolutely heartbreaking to
yeah,
watch as a
well,
country boy.
diverse tonight. Definitely.
But there we go.
Very diverse. Enjoyed it.
Oh, yes. Right. Well, thank you very much,
Yeah,
young man. It's been a
absolutely.
pleasure
Yeah.
and an education, as they say.
Well, it's one of these bits of
Oh, yes.
it's got no limitation. It'll see to the
And I'll be
rifle. You
having a
can
look at
see
one of
the
those little
room with it,
units when I get
etc.,
5 minutes and a
etc.
few
But
readies.
this
Goes on the
little one
phone.
that's on
What
here,
sort of range would I get
um,
off one of those people?
you should definitely be able to tell that it's a rabbit with this at 100 yards, no problem, right? And you'd see it shape, format, movement, etc. Fox, probably out to 250 yards, you'd be able to tell it's definitely a fox. Badger, 300. Go on size, but not just that, but being able to identify. Um, Deer, probably 350, 400 yards. I mean, a lot of people in the past have said further. I always, I'll sort of undertell you if you wish, but they're sort of realistic. So for anybody that's sort of into air rifle sort of things, sub 12 stuff, that want to get into thermal but don't want to spend a fortune, most people these days have got an amazing smartphone and they could fasten one of these to it, spend less than we'll say £400, we'll say roughly, give you an idea. Um, It'll outperform something that does sort of 800 quid as a new piece of equipment. You
Yeah.
can look at it and scan around with it instead of having to look it up to your eye. It's just so versatile. So, you know, it's a great piece of kit. Um, the other stuff, as I said before, then you go to other extreme where you've got the DNT optics, the Thermite. I mean, they say this one's the 225, which the base model in the multispectral. You've then gone from having something that's the thermal unit, the little lens, to the thermal that's on the front of this one. And this one, this is just unbelievable for me. You get the beauty of this in that you've got the thermal at the bottom and the IR obviously at the top side of things, the night vision thing. So you've got a 5 to 20 scope, and you've got a 3 to 12 scope. So you've got the best of both worlds from both things that you might want. So whereas you might want a night vision and then, I mean, people have said historically over years, night vision on your rifle, thermal for spotting and scanning. With this one, I know people sometimes say, well, I don't want to scan with something that's on my rifle. Fair play, that's your choice. It depends upon where you are and what you're doing. So when you've got both options on this, you got the thermal for your scanning, but you can have both. So your main screen, when you look at it, could either be day or night vision, or it could be night vision, or you can have picture in picture. And at the press of a button, your picture in picture basically change, for want of a better description. So you might have thermal as your main picture, day or night vision at the top in your picture in picture, swap it and change it round. So you can scan in thermal, find it in thermal, which we're discussing, then turn it over to night vision. Can you take your shot? No, I'll take it on thermal, or vice versa. So you've got that side of stuff. And then the beauty, the little Zulus that you can use, obviously, as a monocular, because it's so bloody small, so nice, so light. I mean, this is the old DNT, the old Arkan one, which had a few adaptations on this since. For the change over to what it is now on the DNT optics, but this thing, it's like it fits in your pocket, it's in your hand. So before, when we were saying like the big old clue light lamps, a million candle powers, you know, it's here, but it's in your hand, going in a pocket. It's the technology is phenomenal. So where we went from, I'll just undo this one. We went from, as we were saying earlier on. Well, have you still
Yeah.
got your Infinity one there of Eddie's? Is that sat at side of you? Or have you shifted it? Yeah, you've got that. And I'll hold that one. So we've gone from that big hunk to this into thermal over the period of time that I've been doing
Next,
Night
still here.
Vision UK. Oh, blind, yeah. Well, it actually comes in a headphone case. I mean, it
Well,
does
if I
come.
hold up my headphone case,
Hang on. It does come supplied in a bigger
that's
carriage,
about the same
but
size. Well, this might actually be bigger.
yeah, the little thing itself comes in no
Oh,
more than
bloody
a
hell.
headphone case. So, how things have moved on. I'm so glad that you've got that piece of kit there of Eddie's original NVUK one
That's you don't bloody lose it.
to be able to show, so we can compare the difference in where things have moved. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, just finishing up. I follow a couple of
right,
American YouTubers who specialize in coyote control. You've got the Night Crew, which you've probably heard of, Texas, and you've got a couple of farm lads. They're called
right, yeah.
O'Neill.
So that's thermal.
Their thermal is that good. If you imagine a coyote like that furry coat
Yeah,
like a wolf, their thermal actually shows you the like roughness of the coat at like 150 yards. It's incredible. I don't know which units they use, but
oh
it's
yeah,
incredible footage.
yeah. You'll see 'em flying off.
And
Yeah,
it's to the point when you shoot coyotes, they naturally pee and poo on death, and you can actually see them doing that with the blood
yeah,
spatter all at the same time and fur fly out. And the HD, I suppose you call it, or the footage of it,
yeah,
it's absolutely incredible because you've got all this going on, and these guys are like, yeah, that's one less, and they've got a farm, I suppose, however big their farm is, but they all leave if a bullet falls over and
yeah.
dies. They all move some around bales about 100 yards away and make them like a little fort, climb in there so they're out of the wind and the weather,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
use the drop down steer as bait for any coyotes passing. And fabulous. And like the Night Crew, they used to have a rig, and they're the guys that used to have the huge,
yeah.
like three high powered beams, video, um, clear footage, normal footage, just with
They just
lights
do things so
and cool
differently. But
stuff like
I mean,
podcasting. We used to like
helicopters.
almost to the front bumper of the
Well,
truck and
but
drop
we'll
them.
call them helicopter
They now do it
gunships
on
shooting
foot and
hogs.
stuff, and they do the thermals now as well. But they
The
still
nature
use
of
this
their
big
land,
light,
isn't it?
big ass
It's
light
what
as
they have
well.
to do.
Incredible to
So
watch. Yeah, yeah, crazy.
uh,
Yeah,
not bad, not bad.
yeah. I had a paraglider. I was out shooting the other day, pigeon control for a friend. I had a bloody
Oh,
idiot in a
fair plays, Greg.
paraglider
Thank
comes
you
through.
very
I'm like,
much indeed for
you
the
need to turn
invite.
around, mate. There's an
Look forward to
airfield.
catching up with you soon. Uh,
Crazy.
yeah. The few names I'll
I
pass
do.
on
Well, I won't
before I
hold you
go
up
for the
any
new
longer.
podcast
Thank you.
today.
It's been a pleasure
Definitely Andy
again,
Dickinson
young man.
from the DNT Optics, the UK sales guy now. Great guy for you. Dave Barham
Yeah,
would
we'll
be a
have
good
to.
one because he'd take you into all the fishing world. Have you done Dave? Have you done
I
Dave
don't.
since you've done the fishing? Yeah. So there's a thank you, but there's a few guys I'll pass on to you that
I've already
makes some
done
fantastic, and
Dave.
a couple of guys in America,
Yeah.
real good guy
Have you not
I
seen
know
the
out there
podcast? He
that
had a
seem to
pint
his
glass full of
coyote
rum.
stuff. Be a real good chance for you to have a catch up with him.
I'll send you the
Cheers,
link in
Greg.
a minute.
Great pleasure. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care. Don't forget to subscribe to Greg. That's him. Yeah,
Ideal, sweet.
www.nvuk.co.uk.
Ideal. Thank you very much, man. Thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers. And it's
Superb.
dodgynightvision.com.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
Ideal. Thanks a lot, folks. Cheers.